Salut à toutes et à tous, c'est Ilyes. On se retrouve aujourd'hui pour une interview exceptionnelle avec Monsieur Dan Hardy qui est parmi nous. Monsieur Dan Hardy, vous le connaissez, ancien combattant UFC, brillant analyste et commentateur et surtout directeur des opérations concernant les combattants pour le PFL Europe. Dan, it's great to have you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
No worries. It's good to be here. Good talking to you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, because you did it then. You signed Abduragimov, former double champ at Ares Fighting. He was looking to make his debut at UFC Paris, but finally decided to join the PFL. That's a huge accomplishment for you guys.
Yeah, we're very happy. The team worked really hard to come to an agreement that he was happy with, and I think all parties are. I think we're very excited about him joining the roster. We're very fortunate to have him fighting in Paris before he moves on to fight in the regular season next year. And moving down to lightweight as well. I mean, he was a scary individual at welterweight and middleweight, but in the lightweight division, I feel like we're really going to see the best of him. And that's where we're going to need him, because he's going to be fighting the best in the world next year. So we'll see. We'll see. What comes of it. But he might just be the guy that takes over the division, and I think a lot of people will believe that when they see him in Paris.
He's a scary dude. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan. The fight is going to be at welterweight, but you just mentioned that Abdul is going to compete in the future at the lightweight division.
That's correct. Yeah, the fight in Paris will be at welterweight. He's fighting Otoni, who's one of the only people that's beaten Alex Pereira. So a nice little storyline there. Of course, a very good Brazilian jiu-jitsu player as well, who is very dangerous off his back. So we're going to hopefully see Abdul tested a little bit as well. I don't like any easy fights, and I don't think anybody gets easy fights on the PFL. And I'm happy with that matchup.
That's for sure. That's the next question I was going to ask you. It is true that Kemuel Otoni, it's not a gift for Abduragimov. He's the welterweight champ of Jungle Fight. We know this organization very well. Charles Oliveira, Jose Aldo, and of course Paulo Costa fought at Jungle Fight. Yeah, it's pretty tough for a first fight.
Yeah, I think so. But I also, I feel like he's ready for it. I mean, 16-1. I just didn't want to put somebody in front of him that the fans weren't excited to see because they expected him to win. I think Ares did a very good job of matching him when he was over there. I think he was tested well, and I think it's time for him to be tested again. And I think that Otoni brings that kind of level of skill to the smart cage that will, give Abdul a second thought about maybe taking the fight to the floor. We might see some more of his striking. I saw in the recent video of him that he looks in very good condition. So I'm expecting to see a much faster, cleaner version of him this time around as well. But it's the right matchup for the right time, because the fights only get harder from this point onwards.
Honestly, I can't wait. And the 13th of September, French fans will have the chance to assist, to be part of the first ever PFL event in France and in Paris. There are 5 French fighters in that card. So Yazid Chouchan, Anthony Salamon, Cédric Doumbé, Jordan Zebo, and Abduragimov. It's a really stacked card, and I imagine that you are really proud of it.
I am, yeah. I think we've got some very some very interesting matchups, some very explosive matchups. Even down on the undercard, the likes of Ali Taleb against Khurshid Kakarov. That's a very very interesting and fiery fight. Chanel Dyer making her PFL debut. She's a very promising athlete. I'm just excited from the card from start to finish, really. And of course, the fights get better as we go along. And Shane, as you mentioned, another exciting prospect coming out of France. That I expect to be on his best form for September 30th.
And of course, in the main event, we have the man, Cédric Doumbé, who will face Jordan Zebo. They are both 4-0, unbeaten for the moment. Jordan Zebo fought for Ares Fighting, that you know pretty well. I have to admit, Dan, that I was a little bit surprised when I heard the news. Tell me, why did you choose Jordan Zebo as Cédric Doumbé's first opponent at PFL? Sorry.
Well, Cédric Doumbé signed to the global roster, so the global team were the ones that did the matchmaking on the main event. And you know, we discussed a variety of different welterweights. I mean, there were some restrictions based on the French Commission and the fact that Doumbé's not got a great deal of experience. You know, we looked all the way up to the top end of his record of what we could allow, and there just weren't that many intriguing fights that were available, you know, or people that would take it. That was the issue we were having because, of course, you know, 4-0 mixed martial arts is also 75-7 in kickboxing, which is, you know, a scary prospect for some fighters. And, you know, I did have a couple of fighters that were interested, but they weren't the right opponent. Doumbé needs someone that's going to test him, take him down, grapple him, lift him up, slam him to the canvas. And also someone that's defending their unbeaten record. You know, I wanted someone that had a clean record. And I think the global team did a very good job in finding and negotiating Zebo into that position because it's again, you know, like the co-main event, like Lazy King. I didn't want an opponent that looked like it had been set up ready for Zebo, ready for Doumbé to step in and take them out. And Zebo brings a different kind of energy. He's a tough challenge for Doumbé. We know what he's going to do. It's a classic matchup, striker v grappler. And I think we're going to see if Doumbé is ready to take that step up to the global roster, because that's the intention, of course. But if Zebo comes in and starts throwing him around, then, you know, it might be time for him to stay in Europe and fight for the European title first. So the questions to be asked around Cedric, lots of pressure on him. And I think Zebo is a very interesting matchup.
Hats off to Cedric and hats off to you and your team. When I said that it was a surprise for me, it was a good surprise, of course. And it's true that Jordan Zebo is a complete different fighter than Jarrell Silawi, who was supposed to fight against Cedric in June at Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Al Salawi is a different type of challenge. You know, he's a more experienced mixed martial artist. He's far more measured in the striking range. But to be honest, you know, the questions aren't around whether Cedric Doumbé is going to be a good striker in mixed martial arts. It's whether he can strike in mixed martial arts. And those questions are asked by someone that can grapple very well. Mm-hmm. Like Al Salawi would have most likely stood on the outside. And unfortunately, we've seen him beaten in the striking range. Like we remember what Sadibou Sy did with that knee to the body. Like we would expect Doumbé to do something similar. So, you know, there's no real surprise there if that's what would have happened. And the other thing as well is, you know, the fans need to see something new of Cedric Doumbé. And Doumbé's saying that he's ready for the global roster. He told me a few weeks ago that he wants to fight Sadibou Sy. Mm-hmm. That's a big step up in competition. Like we need to see him under pressure, dealing with someone that's going to try and take him down if we're going to see how good his striking is in MMA.
I can't wait also for this fight. And of course, you have Doumbé's fans who are convinced that he's going to win by a vicious knockout. But also on the other side, you have Jordan Zebo's fans who think that he can overwhelm Cedric Doumbé by his wrestling and his grappling. Is it a 50-50 fight, or in your opinion, there is a strong favorite in this fight, in this opposition? What do you think about that fight?
You know, I think it's about as close to 50-50 as you can get. I mean, of course, you know, their records are the same. I may give a slight edge towards Cedric Doumbé, just given the fact that he's got the experience in high-level kickboxing matches, which will maybe give him a bit more composure in that circumstance. But then the thing that balances it out is that, you know, because he's Cedric Doumbé, he has more pressure on his shoulders than Zebo does. So he needs to be better at dealing with pressure than Zebo does, because he's the one that's got more to lose, I would say, in this circumstance. So, you know, I think all things taken into account, it's a very even matchup. It's a huge win for Zebo, and it's a must-win for Doumbé. And I like that kind of pressure.
Absolutely, you summarized it perfectly. The fight is interesting because of their skills, but also because of the tension between Cedric Doumbé and Fernand Lopez. Dana, I don't know if you are aware of this, but Cedric Doumbé and Fernand Lopez don't like each other. And Cedric is trash-talking Fernand Lopez for months now. We know that Jordan is trained, of course, by Fernand Lopez, so this fight will also be very personal. It's great for your event.
I mean, that wasn't necessarily the intention here. I mean, the matchup was the right matchup, but of course, you know, there is drama here. The downside is that I don't like drama between two people that can't fight together, because, you know, Fernand is a coach and a very good coach. but he's not going to step in there and fight Doumbé himself. So, this becomes an interesting situation for the training camp of Zebo, who, of course, is motivated for himself, but will also be very motivated by his coach, who desperately wants the win as well. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, if you're Fernando Lopez, you've got Adez to deal with, you've got, Cyril Gane training, MMA Factory to run. He's a very busy man. So the additional motivation that he's fighting, his fighters facing Cedric Doumbé, it might just be what Zebo needs to get the advantage in the fight.
And in France, people are excited as hell for this fight. I've also read some people saying that they are more hyped for Doumbé versus Zebo than Cyril Gane versus Sergey Spivak at UFC Paris. Do you think that your events can compete against UFC Paris? Will take place the same month?
I think we're living in a time where there are enough MMA fans and enough interest for two MMA events of that kind of size to occupy the same month. I would hope it would get to the stage where we'd have, two PFL events in Paris each month, because I want it to grow that fast. There are so many fighters out there, and I think more events, the better. The UFC always do a lot to excite the fans and to bring great fights to the cities, and they'll do that on at the beginning of September. And I think that will lay a good foundation, because when the UFC's had their amazing event, people will be like, okay, when's the next MMA event? And then fortunately, Cedric Doumbé's right there on their doorstep. So I think it works well together. The more MMA, the better, always.
Absolutely. It's not a surprise. Cedric may be the most popular French fighter right now, even more than Cyril Gane. He was teasing a signature with the UFC for a long time. How did you manage to convince him to sign for PFL?
It's the flexibility of his contract, I think. There's the ability to do a lot of things within the PFL family. I mean, we see that with Francis Ngannou, we see that with Jake Paul. But, big opportunities can be created for fighters like Cedric Doumbé, who has the following and the name and the impact that he has. I mean, who knows what Cedric Doumbé wants to do with his future, but taking on an MMA career after already establishing himself in kickboxing so well, it shows you how motivated he is. And the other thing as well is, this is a quick way of bypassing 15 fights to build yourself up to the top, right? I mean, he's going to have one fight in Paris. Then in the new year, we're going to see him right in the regular season. If he wins the first two fights in the first round by knockout, he'll be in the championship. It's like shortcut to $1 million for a fighter that's only just starting their career. It makes perfect sense for him. And, of course, it would have been good to see him in the mix on the UFC roster, but he would have probably gotten lost in there because of how many fighters they have and how many shows they have. We can really celebrate Cedric Doumbé the way that he should be celebrated, by giving him the right opponents and the right platforms.
And the right amount of money also. $140,000, is it correct?
Hey, you know more than me, my friend. I don't know. I don't talk numbers with these fighters. That's for Ray Sefo and the team. But I'm sure he's very happy with what he's getting. And I'm sure that the partnership with the PFL will be beneficial for all of us.
Absolutely. Then I also wonder if someone like Michael Venom Page, who is a free agent, can sign for the PFL. Is he a profile that you're interested to sign?
Absolutely. I mean, if I was dealing with the big budgets, then I would be signing MVP straight away. But, these are all things that are in negotiations, I'm sure. He's a very interesting prospect. Everyone's interested in signing him because of I mean, what's his potential? And another good example, right? He fights MMA, but he's also boxed. MVP is a very, very good boxer. So, there's lots of opportunities for MVP over here. I would like to see him join the PFL family, but regardless, I'll be a fan and I'll watch wherever he goes and whatever he does.
Then sign him, please, to PFL, because I have to be honest, the fight of my dream was Cedric Doumbé versus Michael Venom Page. I was dreaming about that fight for maybe PFL Paris. So it's not the case, but maybe in the future we can see Cedric compete against Michael Venom Page at the PFL. It would be amazing.
That would be a great matchup. Absolutely. I'll write that down on my notice and on my notice board, and we'll work towards it, my friend. I like that.
I have already one last question, and I want to speak about your biggest star for the moment, Francis Ngannou. You were able to sign him also at the PFL. He's fighting against Tyson Fury on October in a boxing match that no one or almost no one can see him win. What does he has to do to be the first to defeat the Gypsy King in a boxing ring?
Well, I mean, the first thing is to go and train with Mike Tyson. I think that's a
Mhm.
big positive move. If you look at what Mike Tyson was doing when he was the heavyweight champ, he was the smaller fighter that had to work around longer, taller opponents, get inside their jab, and then beat them up on the inside. Like that's what Francis Ngannou has to do. So Mike Tyson's the best person to teach that to him. Get that peekaboo style going, weave his way inside. And the other thing as well is don't neglect the body shots,
Mhm.
because the danger with being a power puncher is that they always chase the head, because it's just one punch and the fight's over. But some smart work would be to work the body, throw some big shots around the stomach, the liver, and try and bring the arms down of Tyson Fury, and then go for the head. Of course, I mean it's a very, very tough test for him. There's no doubt about it. But what a great opportunity for him, and what a fun fight for us as fans, to see the heavyweight champ of the world step into the boxing ring against the heavyweight champ of the world. I'm just excited that it's happening, and that he's getting the money he deserves for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, thank you very much. And do you have maybe something to add to this interview, a message that you want to share with the fans, the people that who are going to watch this interview?
Just make sure that you give us a follow. I'm at Dan Hardy MMA and at PFL Europe. Give us a follow. Tune into what's going on. This is our first year with the regular season in Europe. And in December in Dublin, we're going to crown our first 4 PFL Europe champions. So get involved and follow the story, because it's grown very quickly. And it's been nice talking to you.